All right, good morning. So I have the equivalent fractions worksheet here, and I wanted to go over the first two problems. So what's nice about this worksheet is we have the pies, so we can utilize them to color in our fractions. So the first fraction, let's look at 1a, it gives you is 2/5. So the first thing I'm going to do is shade in 2/5 in the pie so that I can see what that looks like. All right, so I shaded 2 out of my 5 total parts of that pie. Now, if we look at our next shape, we're going to shade in the same amount of that shape to figure out what our numerator would be. Before I do that, though, I'm going to count up how many pieces are in this second shape so that I can figure out what my denominator is, because our denominator is always the amount in the hole that it's cut into. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so we can get a little closer. All right, so I'm going to count now. I'll do this in black. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 pieces. So 15 is my denominator because that's the total number that my whole is split into. My numerator will be whatever I shade. So let's drag this over so we can see. All right, I can see 2/5. As I'm thinking about shading this fraction, I see that this straight line going up is where I started shading, and over on this line I can see this straight line going up, okay? I'm also noticing that this diagonal line going down is where I stopped shading, and I can see that same line right here. So it looks like that's about what I'm going to shade. I'm going to take my green, I'm going to shade in these pieces. So I've shaded 3 pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if you look at these two pictures, you can see that the same amount of the pie is taken up. I shaded 6 pieces here, so that's going to be my numerator. 2/5 is equivalent to 6/15. I can see that based on the picture, and I can also think about multiplication. If I look at this first fraction here, I know if I multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number, I can turn it into an equivalent fraction. So looking over at this second fraction, I have 6/15. Okay, what number could I multiply 5 by to get to 15? 5 times 3 equals 15. I have to multiply the numerator by the same thing. And 2 times 3 does equal 6. So the picture shows me it's equivalent, and then my multiplication showed me that it was equivalent. So the answer for this first problem is 6/15. For this second problem, I have an improper fraction. So remember, an improper fraction is when the numerator is bigger than the denominator. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shade in 11/5. You can see that each of my pies is split into 5 parts, into fifths, and I need to shade 11 of those fifths. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. 11/5. If we zoom out a little bit so that we can see our next improper fraction, All right, when I'm thinking about how much I need to shade of this next fraction so that it matches the first picture, I notice that these two first circles are completely shaded. So the holes are shaded. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shade the two first circles here. But remember, just like in the first problem, before I do that, I'm going to count up the parts of one circle to figure out what my denominator is. These circles over here were split into 5 pieces, so my denominator was 5. Let's look here. All right, I'm going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Our denominator is the same as it was in the first problem. Okay, 15. Now I'm going to start shading. So we decided that I can shade the first 2 circles because the first 2 circles of this first problem are shaded. I know that if I shade this whole circle, I'm shading 15 out of 15. If I shade this whole circle, I'm shading another 15. 15 plus 15 is 30, so I've now shaded 30 pieces. We now need to make sure that this last circle of our first improper fraction and this last circle match up. So I'm going to do what I did above. I see that this straight line is where I started shading. So I know that this straight line is where I'm going to start shading. This diagonal line was where I stopped shading, and I can see that this diagonal line is where I'm going to stop shading. I'm going to go back to my green. So I've shaded 1, 2, 3 pieces. So in total I shaded 15, and 15 is 30, and 30 plus 3 is 33. So my numerator is 33. My new improper fraction is 33/15. Let's check our answer with multiplication. Okay, again, 5, I'm looking at my 11/5 over here. 5 times what will equal 15? Well, 5 times 3 equals 15. I have to multiply my numerator and denominator by the same thing. So, 11 times 3, does that equal 33? It does. So I can see with my pictures and my multiplication that those 2 fractions are equivalent. You can use these answers that we worked on in the video together, and then you can try the rest by yourself if you're up to it, and we can go over it tomorrow morning.